Well, good evening, good morning, everyone. It is good to have you here today as we discuss a very important topic. Whether you're a faculty or student, we're going to have this very important conversation. Today, we are resuming our series on Qualitative Research Connect, trying to understand different topics. And today I have invited a very important person that I have known for quite a number of years, Dr. Koto. I think we go way back.
Yes,
Is it like 10
that
years, something?
yes, that's beyond that. Yeah, it's quite some time now.
Yes, something like that. When did you get to the Philippines again?
2010.
Oh, don't tell me I met you there.
Yeah, it's 2010.
So that means we've known each other for about what 13 years now, 13 years.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we've worked on a number of projects together with Dr. Koto, and you'll get to hear, I think, some of this as we go through the conversation today. But we just want to welcome each and everyone. I saw people joining in from different countries, mainly the Philippines, but I saw Uganda, some countries in Europe, here in the United States. Even in the Caribbean, I saw some joining from Haiti, from Cameroon, you name it. So for those who were planning to watch on Facebook, I apologize. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're going to upload this there, so the recording there, so that people can watch that. Those who are not able to join, we'll make sure that this problem is fixed before next time's session. Starting today, we will have more frequent sessions than before. I had to put a stop on this several months ago because I was working on a major project, book publication project, which Dr. Ekoto is part of, by the way. We are always finding ourselves and co-authoring and books. It's quite interesting. Even if we have worked in different countries, we are always connected on these matters of scholarly work. So let me introduce myself to I'm going to introduce him to you, but please, I I hope that we're not going to be unmuting ourselves so that we can have a smooth conversation. Dr. Ekoto is a university professor and administrator with 10 years or more of experience in teaching and leadership in multi and cross-cultural settings at the global level. I know I've known him working in different countries. Even when we met the first time, we were both in Asia, and now we are both in the United States. And at a certain point, I think we were both on another continent. So it's yes, indeed, he's very international. He works not only here in the United States, but he serves on the different committees, dissertation, thesis committees, and in different countries. Dr. Ekoto has a strong passion for qualitative research. His qualitative portfolio includes pioneering and supervising the establishment of qualitative research curriculum at a university in the Caribbean, designing and delivering undergraduate and graduate level courses, authoring and co-authoring several qualitative research chapters for reputable publishers such as Sage Publishers, and supervising qualitative research projects and thesis, attending and presenting at international qualitative research conferences, and providing training on qualitative research to university faculty. Some of you have met Dr. Ekoto, probably face to face. Maybe others you have met him on Zoom because he's a very active scholar. And today is such a great blessing to have him with us. So let's get started with this conversation. Let's get it going, Dr. Koto. How did your passion for qualitative research start?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Safari, for that introduction and for the privilege. I just want to congratulate you on your recent PhD. Really appreciate what you do, and I'm doing this on purpose because it's going to help me share a
Very
few
nice.
things. I'd like to
Good.
greet all those who join us from different parts and pray that they will be enriched by this conversation. Now, how did this all start? Well, first, it's a bend. You know, I have a bend for research. I love research in general, and I took like a cognate in research at my PhD level. And number two, it's a class. When you attend a class and you are at the foot of seasoned qualitative researchers who have that passion, it kind of gives you some insights, and that participated to also a paper. I attended the class and I chose to start and write a paper using qualitative design, and that was there is nothing like doing qualitative research to ignite that passion, you know. Also a conference. I attended the conference and I was able to present my results. And then I think one of the things that also solidify that passion is my profession, you know. I'm a person of faith and I deal with words, spoken and written, every day and with people. And that's qualitative research. You deal with people and words, either written or spoken. That's the combination, I think, that built that passion for qualitative research in me over
Wonderful.
time.
So what I'm hearing here is that, you know, qualitative research that just doesn't just happen. It is something that we have to invest in. You know, I've been in many different universities as a guest speaker, and I find people, especially students, wanting to do a qualitative study for their thesis or dissertation. And you ask them, have you taken any qualitative research classes? And no, I'm just going to do qualitative research. And what is that? So I'm just going to do interviews and that's it. So what is qualitative research? It's interviews.
Yeah.
And I'm looking there, it's like, you're killing me right now. You're killing me to think that just because you know the word interview, then that's all you need to actually carry on a qualitative study for your thesis and dissertation. And basically, they have no training, no class. Many universities don't have classes in qualitative research. In fact, that's what my dissertation was on. How do people move from a heavily quantitative culture at a university to a culture where both quantitative and qualitative research are integrated? And it is clear that many universities are not offering qualitative research classes. And if there is no qualitative class in the curriculum, how should students get that knowledge to prepare them for their thesis and dissertation if they want to conduct qualitative research?
And that's really true. I have seen it as a student. I have seen it as a professor. I have seen it as a vice president for academic administration. You know, it's let me branch a little. It's like online education. You know, people want to do online education, but they don't really understand all that it entails.
Yeah, because they are on Facebook, they know
they're on
how to
Facebook, on
make a
WhatsApp. They
Facebook and
think
send
that's
email.
online. It's the same thing with research, and more specifically with qualitative research. And as I was reflecting on my journey, I realized that passion builds up with experience. You know, there's that little light that sparks it, but you have to nurture it. And there was a bend for research in the first place in my case, but I had to go through training, learn from mentors, from people who and that's important. You have to find people or mentors who love research and love qualitative research. Because if you fall in the hands of somebody who doesn't like it, it's going to be harder for you to develop that passion. So it takes time. It takes time and a lot of experience. But I want to stress this. that paper was a really a game changer for me. Like what I'm saying is doing it makes the difference.
Wow, wow, wow. So it's not just about sitting and listening, but
No,
actually doing
doing it.
qualitative research. And I think most of us, if not all of us who have done qualitative research, we know that until you conduct your own qualitative research and trying to implement what you have learned about qualitative research, you really have just theoretical knowledge, because there is
Yeah,
a lot of surprises that you see there when you are
yeah.
conducting your qualitative research study. Okay, let's go to another question. And you have started the work mentioning some of these. What challenges, what major challenges have you seen with faculty advising students in qualitative research, thesis or dissertation?
Yeah, coming to faculty advising students,
Yeah.
I would list these challenges very briefly. Number one, I think there is a paradigmatic challenge. I mean by that some advisors, some faculty find it hard to shift from quantitative to qualitative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen many of them approaching qualitative research with a quantitative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So in the conversations, even on during defenses, you hear them talking about hypotheses, about variables, about objectivity, about generalizability. So these terms, these jargons are specifically for quantitative. So when I hear that, I say, wow, they really need that change. So they still want that quantitative mindset in the qualitative research. That's number one. Number two.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Let me talk about that one. I think this is very, very important, because when faculty do not know qualitative research, then it is hard for them to advise their
yeah,
students on qualitative research.
very hard.
And a part of this, Dr. Ekoto, what I have found, again, I've seen this in many universities. I have had the privilege to visit and consult, be a consultant to many universities. The guidelines themselves do not have these concepts that are the equivalent for qualitative research. So the faculty are using the concepts that they have in the handbook, research handbook, which is purely quantitative. Please continue.
Quantitative. That's exactly the problem, and which leads me to what I mentioned earlier. Another challenge is that some faculty uh, approach qualitative research from a theoretical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That is, some of them, they know, they've read about it, but they've never done it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have faculty like that, it affects the advising process as well.
Yeah.
Another one they find hard is a methodological challenge, because they don't understand the different kinds of methodologies and designs and strategies. Even when you mentioned interviews earlier, some people don't even realize that there's different types of interviews in qualitative research, and there's interviews for research and interviews for other purposes. So they come into the qualitative, they just interviews and they do it anyhow. They don't realize all the necessary steps that they have to take in to be able to conduct that qualitative research. Some people don't even know. Yeah.
So basically, they have limited knowledge on qualitative research. So it's like a blind person leading another blind person. Really, that's what is happening. But simply because they are in a position of power as faculty, so they say, "Hey, you can do it. You do this and you do this," but they themselves do not have the knowledge. What do we do about that before you go to another challenge? What do we do about?
Well, for that, I think beyond just the theoretical knowledge, especially for faculty, and that has to do with administration and leadership at the school level, there needs to be put in place a structured training for professional development for faculty to be able to get to the point of, I'm talking about publishing qualitative research, not just doing it. So when they go through the entire process, that experience, as I told you earlier, doing it really makes a difference. When you've gone through it yourself, you can't advise your students the same way. That professional development is very important. And I had the privilege of doing that in one university, and I will talk about it maybe later in the program.
All right, thank you so much. Before we continue, I just want to give a couple announcements, and we're going to discuss now the side of the students very soon. If you want a certificate, please take a screenshot before we end this session. We still have about 40 minutes, and that screenshot needs to show your name, and then you send that information to the email address that you used to receive the information from us. I'm going to put it here. It's qlrconnect@gmail.com. So please make sure that you take a screenshot. Then you send that and you say, I'm requesting the certificate of attendance, and send that to the email address that you see there. That will be evidence that you were here, and we'll make sure that we should issue that certificate to you this week. Don't expect it overnight. Please give us a few days. By Friday, you should receive that certificate. Now on the next question, Dr. Ekoto. What challenges have you seen students facing in a qualitative research dissertation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. When it comes to students now, I think one of the challenges is no or low access to qualitative research resources, like literature and mentors, people who have done it, who know what they're doing. And sometimes also some have it because of the language barrier. And much of the research is published in English. And it's harder for people who don't have English as their first language or even second language to access the literature and all the resources that are out there. That's number one. Number two is they have poor reading skills. Students usually don't know how to read and read research. What I mean is what to search for, how to select what you read, okay? And I had, when I was writing my dissertation, I had the privilege of learning how to read research. It took me a process. And by the way, that process that I took became a chapter in a book, in a research handbook, because I had to share my own experience. It was an amazing journey, but I had to be very methodical, very structured, and I had to go step by step. So, and that's important, reading skills. Next is poor writing skills, and that I cannot emphasize much. And poor writing skills affect format, style, flow, logic, clarity, consistency, and even academic integrity. When we don't know how to write scholarly, that's a challenge for students. And some don't know because they've not been trained, and that's it. And lastly, which is also very critical, poor analytical skills. I've seen students who write nicely, but that elevation towards analyzing the information that they gather is not there. So they write nice English, very good, but the depth is not there. And those poor analytical skills affect the relevance of their research, the scholarship of their research, the scientificity of their research. So I believe that, let me give you an example. And one of the things that I was able to do over the years since I was a student maybe you will be surprised by this, Dr. Safari. Before I got married, I was the wedding planner for 10 weddings of my friends. And one of the reasons was that I was learning how to go through the process. Before doing my own research, I started as a student helping my classmates with editorial work, editing their papers, editing. And I learned so much in that process, you know? So it gave me some insight into some of the things that happened. So you will be surprised that I realized, I think I should write an article on that.
Sure.
Each one of us has our own mistakes that we make in writing mistakes, and some are common to students. Something like a punctuation. You won't believe that there are people who don't know how to put a point, a period at the end of a paragraph. So imagine that mistake being repeated all through a dissertation. And that made me aware of being careful in how I write and how I analyze what I'm writing.
You know, a lot of the points that you have raised there, they are very good points. And by the way, talking about the last point of people not forgetting the period, some of these books that I have, I'm the lead editor of, like the one that we're just finishing now, Dr. Koto, you're part of that. You'll be amazed. Even doctoral people with the PhDs, these are some of the common issues that we deal with. They are able to have ideas and everything, but when it comes to formatting references and things like that, it's quite a challenge. You mentioned the issue of language. And this, I saw this, and it's interesting because a number of things you have talked about here, they came out in my dissertation study. So it's like I have a flashback of all these things that were coming up in the data. We have people. We use English, and most universities use English, except those that are like, you know, using Spanish or Portuguese or French or Russian as the medium of instruction. But many countries, if not the majority of the countries in the world, they use English as a medium of instruction. But we have people coming from different linguistic backgrounds. And so students are having to study in a language that's not their mother tongue. And if they don't read a whole lot, even those who read a whole lot, they may not have the command of English or the second language, whatever second language they're using as a medium of instruction, to be able to write scholarly and put things on at the thesis level or dissertation level. And what do you do about that? How should they go about that? Because we know, as far as the language is concerned, and qualitative research is big, how do they bypass that? How do they deal with that issue that is inherent in the fact that they are studying in a language that's not their mother tongue?
Okay, that is a serious challenge, and sometimes a serious setback for students when it comes to research in general and qualitative research in particular. How do you get to learn that already difficult craft in a different language? What I would say is you just have to learn English and master the language. I have the privilege in my career. One of the things I do is I help and I teach English as a second language to people, to students. When I was in the Caribbean, at the university where I worked, I set up a language school in a country where English is not the first language. When I was a student, one of the things I did is helping, because I'm from a French background, is helping those French-speaking people transition from French thinking to English thinking. And I do that with the Hispanics too. And I realized that it's really a hard thing to do, but you need to take your time. You need to use a certain method. Some people don't want to rush. You don't need to rush that. So you need to read enough. You need to allow yourself to make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. These are the things that I did, and really, really push yourself towards excellence, you know. And that's one thing I want to tell the mentors and the students. aim at excellence. Upgrade yourself through quality readings, upgrade yourself to quality research, upgrade yourself to quality conferences, and innovate. Be creative. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes and grow and master the craft. You can do it. I did it.
All right, thank you very much. I think those are very practical strategies. I want to come back. I want to reemphasize the role of reading as far as actually thesis and dissertation writing in general is concerned, not just for qualitative research. And this is something that I've been talking about a lot in the past, it's even in some of my books, that as you read more and more journal articles, you find your brain getting used to that vocabulary. And as you start writing, you start using those words, your brain has already kind of captured them. They start becoming part of your language. And when you finish writing, and this has happened every time I have written, whether it's a thesis or dissertation, I put it aside for 6 months. And then when I come back, I say, how did I write this? It's because I've been reading a lot about you reading materials, scholarly materials on that topic, that my brain starts getting used to that. So I cannot emphasize that enough. We cannot emphasize that enough, that we need, when we're writing, whether it's for publication or thesis or dissertation, we need to read regularly scholarly materials. That's no longer time to read primarily Wikipedia. That I always tell my students, don't even read that for paper, because anybody can write anything there and you take it as truth. But reading scholarly materials on a regular basis. Before I ask another question, Dr. Koto, I'm going to ask the audience, if you have a question, please put it right there in the chat area, and we're going to take as many questions as possible. We still have enough time, so please throw your question in as quickly as possible, or the comment, you may have a comment, please throw that in. If you have time, you can tell us where you're joining from, and then you ask your question, or you put your comment just next to your short intro. Dr. Koto, what you have shared with us, you talked about language, you talked about resources, you talked about reading and writing. These, to me, are challenges that people face in general as far as writing, thesis dissertation writing is concerned. But can we zoom in on issues that people face, specifically if they are writing a qualitative research thesis or dissertation? Challenges that they will face there that we will not find in a quantitative research thesis or dissertation. Some of them.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. You know, like one of the things I stated earlier in general is that shift, that mind shift towards qualitative research.
Yeah,
and
so
mastering.
that is true with both faculty and students. So let's get from the student side.
From the student side, yeah, you have like they don't see the connection between reading and writing. So sometimes students, they think that writing will just come out of the blue, but writing is the result of reading. So when I teach academic writing, I tell them the reason you can't write is because you didn't read. Now, with that, if I can't read, I can't state my problem qualitatively. That's a big thing. I mean, I struggle in my research classes to help students understand how to establish, how to define a research problem correctly. That's a challenge. And that's one thing. Now, the other thing is, you know, some of the students, and I'll connect it back to reading again. At least for me, what worked for me, anytime I came across a new concept, I didn't brush it away. I had to read it about it, understand what it means, and then do it. So the tendency sometimes is to just replicate what they've read elsewhere, even if they don't plagiarize intentionally. But because they read journal articles, dissertations, they just use the same words without understanding what they mean. And that shows when it comes to analyzing the results, then they get stuck because they didn't understand all that they've written about and they cannot connect it back. So you have students writing a beautiful paper or dissertation, and when it's time to talk about the result, you don't see any connection with the theory, with the statement of the problem. You don't see any of that. They just start listing what they felt they found. You see that, and that flow is not there in the paper. You know, these are some of the challenges that I have seen students. Let me talk to you, for example, about researchers' reflexivity. That's a that's a big issue in itself.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen students, you tell them this is how it looks like, go read about it. But when they write their own, you say, wow, I know one, when I saw it, his research reflexivity, it sounded like limitations.
Mm.
And I told him, another person, it sounded like justification for the research. I said, don't you see that it's not different? So
Yeah.
that understanding of the concepts, yeah, you know. And finally, when it comes to technicalities, writing itself, uh, that flow in writing. You see, one section there's no connective sentence or paragraph between chapters, between sections, between paragraphs. It's just like patchwork. Just throw stuff there, and there's no flow. That's a big problem sometimes I find also.
Thank you very much. Before we continue, I want to share with you the information here, the two books that you see there on the left side. For the first one, Writing Your Thesis and Dissertation Qualitatively, Fear No More. This is for students. If you want to have a lot of practical things, many of the things that Dr. Ekoto has talked about, you'll find them in that book there on the left side. You will be able to get this on Amazon. And on the right side, if you're faculty and you want to get practical strategies, how to advise your students on qualitative research, that's Student Advising and Qualitative Research, Fear No More. Both of them are online and on Amazon. You can download, you can buy the electronic version or the print version if you are in a place where Amazon ships, and they should be able to deliver that quickly. Let's make things as excellent, as good as possible when it comes to whether it's thesis and dissertation writing or advising. Now, coming back to what you were talking about, Dr. Ekoto, basically the challenge that people are facing in the qualitative research, thesis and dissertation writing, it's the whole process, because the process is already established for quantitative research. All the faculty know how to do it in the quantitative research. Most of the guidelines, the templates that the universities have, most universities, they are quantitative. So they say, okay, you know, we have to have objectivity, you have to have this, and the questions must have independent and dependent variable. That's what you see. Everybody knows that, and everybody sees that in the guidelines. But when it comes to qualitative research, they don't have that. And they are transporting this into qualitative research. What do you see as a solution? What do you see as a solution to that? While you're thinking about that, I want to address the question that came so far, and the rest of you, please feel free to put more questions here. The question came from Ryan Gersava from the Philippines, who said, what is your insight around the use of artificial intelligence, especially ChatGPT, in writing qualitative research? I have an answer for you. About 2 weeks or so from now, we will have the webinar specifically on that. So I invite you to come back. I'm not going to address that, and I'm not going to ask Dr. Koto to address that, because that is exactly what the webinar will be about, and the expert in artificial intelligence will be with us. So please come back. we'll be sending the information out soon. Come and join us, and we will have 1 whole hour on that question. Another question, it comes from Saint Voice, Michelette. Hello, and thank you for this training. Can the researcher be absent in qualitative research? Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to let Dr. Koto go to that first before we continue with our conversation. And I'm going to speak to that after that. Can the researcher, in this case, the student who is writing qualitative research thesis or dissertation, be absent in data collection? Good one. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it comes from one of my students.
Oh, good.
AD, yeah. There was a question before, how do you get out of a writing rut? I think we addressed that. Read. When you read, you write better. You read well, you write well. Now, about the presence of the researcher, that's one of the challenges when we talk about the paradigmatic shift from qualitative to quantitative to qualitative, because in quantitative research, there's this idea that you need to get to objectivity so you don't have to be involved. And that's the total opposite in qualitative research. The researcher
let me highlight that. Once you fill up this survey, please put it in the brown envelope, right?
Yeah, that's it. You see, that detachment is exactly the opposite in qualitative research. In qualitative research, the researcher is part of it, entirely part of it. That's why, as I mentioned earlier, you have reflexivity to show how your own person and bias and experience can influence your research. That's why you interact with the participants. You ask them questions back and forth, and you even do triangulation with them. You go back and show them the answers, and if they agree and stuff like that. So that researcher presence, I think that's the way we should put it. The researcher presence is capital, is absolutely part of the qualitative research process. If you get rid of that, that's the end of qualitative research.
Yes. Let me add to that. Very well said, Dr. Koto. I give 2 points on that question as well. The first one is a personal experience that I had when I was conducting research in refugee camps. I had to deal with refugee camps, and one of the camps was dangerous. That if I went there, I could be in, I could get in trouble. And so part of the university, the university made it clear that for us to approve your ERB, Ethics Review Board application, you have to promise that you're not going to go to that specific camp. You will use a research assistant. So there are cases, extreme cases like that, when you have to protect yourself, where you will ask a research assistant to do that for you. But it has to be a convincing reason. For example, in this case, my life was in danger if I went there because they were killing people in the refugee camp, but I still wanted that refugee camp to be part of my study. But other than that, which leads me to the second point, we talk about the researcher as instrument, which confirms what Dr. Ekoto was talking about. And I have written a chapter on that. If you want to read that, it's one of the most cited chapters I have published, actually. I have published in 2020, but it's been cited more than, I think, close to 200 times now. So if you want to get that, just email me or send me a message and say, I want to request this chapter, the researcher as an instrument, because it is innate in the qualitative research, as Dr. Koto has just shared with us, to have the researcher as an instrument. Just like you're collecting data with a survey, you are an instrument, because the data, when you're collecting it, is going through your mind, through your filters. We talk about that in some of our publications. It goes through your filters. You're the one making sense out of data. So if you are absent, you're missing out on a lot. Even in the interviews, when you're conducting interviews, guess what? Because you know your topic well, you have read a lot about it, you can ask follow-up questions that will enrich your data. So if you are not part of you're asking somebody else to collect data for you, and let's say it's interviews or focus group discussions or observations, they will not get the richness that you would have gotten. Dr. Ekoto, you want to add anything to that before we go to the next question?
Yes, and that's important, to understand our role, because I see the other question that Senator Voy asked. It was, won't the vision of the researcher influence? That's exactly what we're talking about, and that's the beauty of qualitative research. As I tell my students, if you have two researchers, two ladies who want to study the lived experiences of teenage pregnancy, for example. Mm-hmm. It will make a difference if one of the researcher never had a teenage pregnancy and the other experienced teenage pregnancy. They won't conduct that research with the same mindset, with the same filters. And it's important for the researcher to disclose these things to the readership, so that we understand where the research is coming from and where the researcher is moving to. So that researcher presence is really key. And as Dr. Safari said, there's things that someone else cannot just do in your stead when you conduct qualitative research. It has to be you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koto. Let's go to another question from Donaldson Dulcio, who said, what can qualitative research reveal about the role of reading in lifelong learning? We know we talked about the role of reading for qualitative research, but here it is about the qualitative research now affecting reading.
Yeah, and in my case, let me tackle this question from another answer. And you see, as qualitative research advisors, I'm talking about faculty now, one of the things I believe we should be for our students is qualitative research mentors, not just advisors. Advisors is, okay, you come, you bring your topic, we work on it, you present your dissertation, you defend it successfully, and that's it. But a mentor is more than that. I remember one time, one of my students came to me and he wanted to do a research on a belief about the dead. And he said, I want to research and understand what does, let me put it in the Bible, teach about the dead. And I asked him, how many positions do you have out there? And he said, two. He said, number one, he said, there's a group that believes that the dead are dead. There's another group that believes that the dead are not dead. I said, okay, when you conduct that research, will you come up with a third position? He said, no. I said, so why do you want to do that research? And he said, wow, so what am I going to do? That's my interest. Then I told him, what if you do a qualitative research on people's actual beliefs? And then I told him, you can, for example, ask questions like, can you use the fork of a dead person? Can you wear the clothes of a dead person? Can you sleep in the bed of a dead person? And I saw the eyes of the students lighting up, saying, wow, that's interesting. And he actually did that research. And he came up with a concept. He called it something, it's a very complex concept. I think it's one of the best I have seen in qualitative, in my advising career. And he's now the research director at the university. The reason I'm saying that is that mentorship is key in building a qualitative research mindset and practice in the students. So when we get students to understand, to be trained in that art, we will have less problems. So I see myself as a seed sower. I sow seeds in my students. And I don't focus on the harvest because I know what I need to do is sow more seed. We need to advocate for qualitative research. And that's important. That's the connection I make with our students.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Koto. We have about just a little bit over 10 minutes before we end this session, and I see more questions are coming. But before we take the next question, I just want to remind those who may have joined a little later, please know that if you want to have the certificate to attend this webinar, you need to request it. You need to take a screenshot of this session and make sure that your name is seen in that screenshot, and email it to us using that email address that I have in the chat area. And we will make sure that you get the certificate. Make sure that when you email us, you put your name there clearly so that we make sure that it's spelled correctly on the certificate. And we'll try to get that to you by Friday. Here's the next question, Dr. Koto. Again, it comes from Saint Avois, Michelet, who said, in this interaction that Dr. Ekoto speaks about, will the researcher's vision not influence the results? I think he or she is asking about our biases as a researcher influencing the study.
Yeah, just to connect with the previous question. So the qualitative, becoming a qualitative researcher will make you a lifelong reader and learner. And that's what happened to me. And that's what happened to my students when I guide them. Now, when it comes to biases, qualitative research embraces biases, celebrates biases. It's part of the process. And that's where there's a challenge between quantity and quality, which shouldn't be, because it's just different ways of looking at the reality. You know, when I teach research, Dr. Safari, I tell my students, okay, you take a quantitative approach, and let's assume you want to understand employees' level of satisfaction in an organization. And you design your survey, your questionnaire nicely, really well, and you hand it to an employee who just got a raise. What will the employee answer? Everything is fantastic. You hand the same questionnaire to an employee who just got fired or got a kind of a punishment. What would he say? Well, everything is bad. Yeah. Isn't that some kind of bias? How sure are you about the truthfulness of those answers? Now, pushing this a little further, even if they speak the truth, the next thing is, how? What do you mean you're satisfied? How does it look like? I want to know. That's where qualitative research comes in. And you cannot get that without that biasness, because the participant will respond with his bias, and the researcher will address the response with his own bias. The only thing is, we in qualitative research, we disclose those biases. We don't deny them. We disclose them, we embrace them, we celebrate them, and then it's part of a discussion. And then another researcher comes and maybe dispute, and that's how the conversation goes in qualitative research.
Yes, thank you very much. And that is what we were referring to earlier as the researcher's reflexivity. You state your biases, you state your training that may have an impact on your study. And this helps you, which is something that we don't do in quantitative research anyways. It helps you to put these biases in the front. And what I always tell my students is that you need to write these things, and whenever you're writing your thesis or dissertation, you're looking at them so that they don't significantly influence your study, because you're aware of them. By stating that, you are keeping them in view so that their influence is not damaging to the study, but you're using that to enrich the study. Again, if you want to learn more about that, just contact me and I will share that chapter, The Researcher as an Instrument, because that's what it is, the researcher as an instrument in qualitative research. Let's go to another question that came from Mariano Marcos State University. I've been there, Roosevelt Acosta. That's the northern side of the Philippines. I've spoken at that university, I think, 2 or 3 times. And the question is this. This is a question that we get a lot, especially when we're giving trainings on qualitative research. Is there really such research as quantity and quality research? I guess the question is about, do we really have mixed methods research?
Yes. So far, we have 3 main research paradigms and approaches. You have quantitative, you have qualitative, and you have the mixed methods. And again, that mixed methods has subcategories. It's not just one. So there is such a thing as quali-quanti, what you call quali-quanti in academy, we call it mixed methods research. And depending on where you start, from quali to quanti or from quanti to quali, you'll use a different design to conduct the research based on your research problem and goals and objectives. So there is such a thing that brings the two together. And I know because we work differently. Some minds want quantitative, other minds want qualitative, and there's minds that want to balance the two. And that's there for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to go to the last question. But before I give this last question, again, I want to emphasize to claim your certificate of attendance. For those who want to do that, you will have to actually email the screenshot that shows your name to
Dr. Safari, I would like to stress that certificate thing that you've been saying it, but sometimes we don't get it. That certificate can make a difference even in hiring.
Yes.
Just say.
Yes, yes, that's correct. And that's the reason why in the past we didn't issue certificates, but now we are starting to do that. And the whole reason why I'm asking that it be emailed, not posted here or send it to me on my messenger, is that it's only if you are here that you will know the email address of this webinar. Other people are going to watch this, the recording, they are now going to get that certificate. So please send the screenshot by email. I would say send it within the next 48 hours, and then we'll make sure that you get the certificate. Okay. Last question, Dr. Ekoto. We have only 4 minutes to go. Practical strategies for students who are writing a qualitative research study, whether it's thesis or dissertation. What are some of the practical things specific to qualitative research that they have to do? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, practical things for them that they can take.
Number 1, hone your information literacy skills. What I mean by that, learn how to read, find, evaluate, organize, use, and communicate qualitative information. You have to adopt a purposeful writing mindset. What I mean is, when you see, sometimes we just read without purpose. You have to read based on your problem statement, based on your goals, your research goals. You have to be able to do that. You have to find the right journals, go to the right books, the right search engines that will help you in your research. Now, practice purposeful writing. One of the things, Dr. Safari, is sometimes students write without justifying what they write. They just write. And by justifying, I mean, number 1, citing the authors of the ideas correctly. I've seen cases where students just write. They don't care about who said what. And I tell them, I just ask them, who said this? Is it you or someone else? If it is you, okay. But if it's someone else, you have to make sure that you cite that person. And then, for example, you have a section like reflexivity. For me, as an advisor, instead of just writing your biases, You can have a sentence or two that explains what reflexivity is and cite that and why you're using it specifically in your research. What is the reason you're doing it? And you show that you understand what you're doing. That backup is lacking from A to Z in some of our dissertations. We'll just write. It's not about only citing authors, but also making the reader understand that you know what you're doing. You understand what you're doing. Now, there is another thing is those information literacy skills should not be an end in themselves, but tools to do qualitative research. So sometimes students are happy they passed academic writings. Oh yeah, now I know how to read, I know how to write, but then what?
Yeah.
You have to be able to use it now as a tool to conduct qualitative research, those skills. Now, sharpen your interpersonal skills. And this, doctor, I must emphasize this. Qualitative research is never done in isolation. Even if you want to say intrinsically, at least you have your advisor, which means you need other people. You need mentors, you need your advisor, you need your committee, you need the other researchers and all that. So if you don't know how to connect with others, it's going to be hard. What works for me? Number one, study groups. It's beautiful if you have a group to work with. We did that. And we met every week for an hour and we discussed about research, about qualitative research. You need thesis and dissertation groups. That's more specific. You have people and with peer tutoring, attend conferences. Oh, students don't like that, you know. Sometimes I was in a university. There's a conference right there on campus. They don't want to go. They don't want to go. Be there and look for research mentors. You know, when you have people to guide you, it's easier, and listen to them. Listen to them. Now, in terms of
Dr. Koto, can we wrap up? It is
yes.
time if you could wrap up in 30 seconds.
Yes, pushing yourself forward. I would say aim at publishing. Don't stop at just having your paper on the shelves at a university. Publish. I won't say publish or perish, but publish and leave. You know, if you aim at publishing, you will be an unstoppable qualitative researcher.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koto. You can give the digital clap for him. It has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation that we've had. And the conversation doesn't end here. We want to thank Dr. Ekoto for sharing his knowledge with us. We have had an amazing conversation. There was one question that came later. Please post it in our Facebook group. The Facebook group is called Qualitative Research Connect. Qualitative Research Connect. If you're not there yet, join. And please ask other people to join that group as well. We will always post the information there. And this session is being recorded. I'm going to upload it there once I have it so that you can watch it again. You can share that with your friends, with your students or your colleagues. And let's continue the conversation. The person who asked that last question, please post it in that place. Dr. Ekoto is going to address it, and the rest of us will jump in. Let's get the conversation going about qualitative research. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I know some of you, it's late. You're about to go to bed, and others are about to go to work. So thank you so much for spending 1 hour with us. The next webinar will be on the use of artificial intelligence in qualitative research. I invite you again to come. You'll get that information on our Facebook group. And those who registered, you will get that information through email as well. Thank you so much again, Dr. Ekoto, for sharing with us and for spending time to work with us. I see Dr. Ismail Salamia, a good friend from Leyte Noma University, and many other people from LNU. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a great conversation. Have a wonderful evening, a wonderful day, and see you in the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.